bout. The bridesmaids rushed forward and began struggling for the slippers, to the damage and disarray of their gowns. And when they were halfway up, Elaine heaved the bouquet, and it burst apart among them, like a bomb of colored fragrance, and the girls below snatched at the flowers, shrieking deliriously. Elaine stood, blowing kisses to everybody, and he was shaking his clasped hands over his head, until they were at the top. When they turned and stepped off, the orange and blue air car had let down directly in front of them, blocking their way. Now he was really furious, and started forward with a curse. Then he saw who was in the car. Andre Dunnan, his thin face contorted and the narrow mustache writhing on his upper lip. He had a slit beside the window open and was tilting the barrel of a submachine gun up and out of it. He shouted, and at the same time tripped Elaine and flung her down. He was throwing himself forward to cover her when there was a blasting multiple report. Something sledged him in the chest. His right leg crumpled under him. He fell. He fell and fell and fell, endlessly, through darkness, out of consciousness. 5. He was crucified and crowned with a crown of thorns. Who had they done that to? Somebody long ago, on Terra. His arms were drawn out stiffly and hurt. His feet and legs hurt too, and he couldn't move them. And there was this prickling at his brow. And he was blind. No, his eyes were just closed. He opened them, and there was a white wall in front of him, patterned with a blue snow crystal design, and he realized that it was a ceiling and that he was lying on his back. He couldn't move his head, but by shifting his eyes he saw that he was completely naked and surrounded by a tangle of tubes and wires, which puzzled him briefly. Then he knew that he was not on a bed, but on a robomedic, and the tubes would be for medication and wound drainage and intravenous feeding, and the wires would be to electrodes embedded in his body for diagnosis, and the crown of thorns thing would be more electrodes for an encephalograph. He'd been on one of those robomedics before, when he'd been gored by a bisonoid on the cattle range. That was what it was, but he was still under treatment. But that seemed so long ago. So many things, he must have dreamed them, seemed to have happened. Then he remembered, and struggled futilely to rise. "Elaine!" he called. "Elaine, where are you?" There was a stir, and somebody came into his limited view. His cousin, Nicolay Trask. "Nicolay, Andre Dunnan," he said. "What happened to Elaine?" Nicolay winced, as though something he had expected to hurt had hurt worse than he had expected. "Lucas," he swallowed. "Elaine is dead." Elaine is dead. That didn't make sense. "She was killed instantly, Lucas. Hit 6 times. I don't think she even felt the first one. She didn't suffer at all." Somebody moaned, and then he realized that it had been himself. "You were hit twice," Nicolay was telling him. "One in the leg, smashed the femur, and one in the chest. That one missed your heart by an inch." "Pity it did." He was beginning to remember clearly now. "I threw her down, and tried to cover her. I must have thrown her straight into the burst, and only caught the last of it myself. There was something else. Oh, yes. Dunnan, did they get him?" Nicolay shook his head. "He got away. Stole the Enterprise, and took her off-planet. I want to get him myself." He started to rise again. Nicolay nodded to someone out of sight. A cool hand touched his chin, and he smelled a woman's perfume. Nothing at all like Elaine's. Something like a small insect bit him on the neck. The room grew dark. Elaine was dead. There was no more Elaine, nowhere at all. Why, that must mean there was no more world. So that was why it had gotten so dark. He woke again, fitfully, and it would be daylight and he could see the yellow sky through an open window, or it would be night and the wall lights would be on. There would always be somebody with him. Nicolay's wife, Dame Cecilia, Rovard Grofus, Lady Lavina Carval. He must have slept a long time, for she was much older than he remembered. And her brother, Bert Sandrason. And a woman with dark hair, in a white smock with a gold caduceus on her breast. Once Duchess Flavia, and once Duke Angus himself. He asked where he was, not much caring. They told him at the ducal palace. He wished they'd all go away and let him go wherever Elaine was. Then it would be dark, and he would be trying to find her, because there was something he wanted desperately to show her. Stars in the sky at night, that was it. But there were no stars. There was no Elaine. There was no anything. And he wished that there was no Lucas Trask either. But there was an Andre Dunnan. He could see him standing, black-cloaked on the terrace, the diamonds in his beret jewel glittering evilly. He could see the mad face peering at him over the rising barrel of the submachine gun. And then he would hunt for him without finding him, through the cold darkness of space. The waking periods grew longer, and during them his mind was clear. They relieved him of his crown of electronic thorns. The feeding tubes came out, and they gave him cups of broth and fruit juice. He wanted to know why he had been brought to the palace. "About the only thing we could do," Rovard Grofus told him. "They had too much trouble at Carvel House as it was. You know, Caesar got shot too." No. So that was why Caesar hadn't come to see him. "Was he killed?" "Wounded. He's in worse shape than you are. When the shooting started, he went charging up the escalator. Didn't have anything but his dress dagger. Dunnan gave him a quick burst. I think that was why he didn't have time to finish you off. By that time, the guards who had been shooting blanks from that rapid-fire gun got in a clip of live rounds and fired at him. He got out of there as fast as he could. They have Caesar on a robomedic like yours. He isn't in any danger." The drainage tubes and medication tubes came out. The tangle of wires around him was removed, and the electrodes with them. They bandaged his wounds and dressed him in a loose robe and lifted him from the robomedic to a couch, where he could sit up when he wished. They began giving him solid food, and wine to drink, and allowed him to smoke. The woman doctor told him he'd had a bad time, as though he didn't know that. He wondered if she expected him to thank her for keeping him alive. "You'll be up and around in a few weeks," his cousin added. "I've seen to it that everything at Trask and Newhouse will be ready for you by then." "I'll never enter that house as long as I live, and I wish that wouldn't be more than the next minute. That was to be Elaine's house. I won't go to it alone." The dreams troubled his sleep less and less as he grew stronger. Visitors came often, bringing amusing little gifts, and he found that he enjoyed their company. He wanted to know what had really happened, and how Dunnan had gotten away. "He pirated the Enterprise," Rovard Grofus told him. "He had that company of mercenaries of his, and he'd bribed some of the people at Gorham shipyards. I thought Alex would kill his chief of security when he found out what had happened. We can't prove anything. We're trying hard enough to, but we're sure Omfrey of Glaspith furnished the money. He's been denying it just a shade too emphatically." "Then the whole thing was planned in advance." "Taking the ship was. He must have been planning that for months, before he started recruiting that company. I think he meant to do it the night before the wedding. Then he tried to persuade the Lady Demoiselle Elaine to elope with him. He seems to have actually thought that was possible. and when she humiliated him, he